Alright guys, the time has finally arrived for me to give you my top 50 coasters. This is definitely the biggest video of the year for me. I am actually recording this on December 31st, so literally the last day of the year. I also want to mention that I tried my best to not show any bias in this video, and these are the top 15% of coasters I've ridden. I have now ridden 325 different coasters, and I thought it was about time to extend the list to 50. Now, before we get into it, I do want to mention 4 coasters that just barely missed the list, those being Behemoth, Thunder Striker, Diamondback, and Steel Force. Those are all 4 pretty good hyper coasters with some good airtime moments, but they didn't do quite enough to make the list. So coming in at number 50 is a personal favorite of mine, and it's Georgia Scorcher. This is absolutely the best traditional stand-up coaster. It's got great airtime, great positives, and is overall one of the most underrated roller coasters I've ever ridden. Coming in at number 49 is Millennium Force. This is an icon, everyone knows this thing. Whether you love it or hate it is kind of up to personal preference. I think it's a bit overrated. It's still got some good sense of speed, and a couple airtime moments, and a few okay moments of positives, but nothing too special. Coming in at number 48 is Leviathan. This is another Giga coaster, and I do like it slightly more than Millennium despite it being shorter, because I think it's got a bit more power in the airtime moments, but it's still definitely one of the weakest Gigas. Coming in at 47 is the coaster I rode more than any other this year. It's Whirlwind at Seabreeze. This thing can be really hit or miss depending on how you ride it, but if you get a good ride on this thing, I'll tell you, you get some mad ejector airtime on some of these pops. And obviously, I know this ride a lot better than pretty much anyone else, but it's still definitely one of the more extreme coasters out there. Coming in at number 46 is Montu. I really debated between this and 45, but I decided to put Montu at 46. It's an intensity machine start to finish. You get really good positives on a lot of these inversions and valleys, and the whip on a lot of these is really good too. And of course, you've got some of that really nice Egyptian theming. Coming in at 45 is Alpengeist. Now, I did decide to put this over Montu because of that Cobra Roll. The Cobra Roll is insanity. It's got some of the best laterals ever, and the rest of the layout is still really good. It's got some nice theming with all the snow and everything, and overall, Alpengeist is definitely worthy of being my favorite B&M invert right now. Coming in at number 44 is the first RMC, and it's Jersey Devil. It's got nice airtime, it's got good hang time. It unfortunately has terrible restraints, but that's okay. Even if it had the normal RMC lap bars, I think it would still be clear that this is the weakest of the RMCs I've done. But that being said, it's still got good ejector and all that, so it does get a spot on this list. Coming in at 43 is TMNT Shellraiser. Unfortunately, this has been SB&O for a while, and we don't know when it's reopening, but it was a really fun ride. You've got an amazing launch, you've got a few good airtime moments, and a lot of fun inversions. I personally don't mind the pothole, so overall this is definitely a ride that you should get out to if you can in the future when it reopens. Coming in at 42 is another personal favorite of mine. It's Comet at Hershey Park. If you get some room on this, you will get some good ejector in some spots. I know a lot of people don't like the new trains, but again, if you get some room, it's just like you're riding in the old trains. Coming in at number 41 is Phantom's Revenge. I desperately need a re-ride on this. I think more than any other coaster, I need a re-ride on this thing because it's been since 2017 and my memory's pretty foggy of it, but I do remember a pretty inconsistent ride. The finale was great. The first half I thought was kind of which is why I do have it down here. I bet it would go up if I give it a re-ride because I do love ejector with minimalistic restraints, but as of right now I have to put it down here at 41. Coming in at 40 and 39 are Gemini Red and Gemini Blue. I sort of clumped these together because they're basically the exact same, and these are insane. They give some of the most absurd, out-of-nowhere airtime ever. On the first drop, on some of these turnarounds, you get great ejector pops, especially if you have some room, and of course it's really fun to duel, and it's just one of, if not the most underrated coaster I've been on. Number 38 is Nitro. This is one of my favorite B&M hypers. It's got a really intense helix that's an instant gray out for me, and it's got some of the stronger B&M airtime. If the trims are off, then you could get ejector on the finale, which is definitely a rarity for B&Ms. This is definitely not a B&M hyper to sleep on. Coming in at 37 is Twisted Cyclone, the weakest iBox RMC. The first drop's great, the rest is kind of okay. It's definitely short, and you could tell it's lacking a bit of the power that some of the other RMCs have, but you still get good sideways ejector and everything like that RMC is known for, so it definitely lands a spot on this list. Coming in at number 36 is the Beast. It is a classic. I used to rave about this thing, but I do realize that it's definitely got some issues. It is a bit lackluster in some spots. There are still some elements like the double helix at the end that are insanity, that give some amazing laterals. And of course, it's one of the best night rides in the world, but I can only rate Beast so high given how inconsistent it is throughout the ride. Coming in at 35 is one that really shocked me when I got a re-ride this year. It's Big Bear Mountain. This thing I think is objectively a bit less intense than the Beast, but it still has some really good forces, like some good floater and some pretty good laterals for a family coaster especially. But what really makes it is the theming. I absolutely love this theme, and the soundtrack and the storyline. It's just one of the most pure fun rides you'll ever find out there. Coming in at 34 is Storm Runner. You've got a really intense hydraulic launch on this thing. Definitely one of the best launches I've done. And a really fun layout to follow it up, which is something not all the hydraulic launch coasters do. You've got great elements like that top hat and the flying snake dive, which is amazing. Storm Runner's definitely more than just its launch. Coming in at number 33 is Boulder Dash. This also has one of the best settings in the world, just like the Beast, so night rides are also amazing on this ride, but I do think it has a bit more force. You get the same great laterals, but you get some more airtime. I do think it's overrated by some, but that being said, it's still a ride you have to experience at some point in your life. Coming in at 32 is Orion. This is the best coaster at Kings Island. I was debating between this and Beast. Beast is still sort of my favorite, but Orion is objectively better, I think. You've got a fantastic first drop, great speed hill, and of course that wave turn at the end is excellent. It is a short ride. It is definitely the shortest feeling Giga, but you still get that sense of speed and some really good elements for a B&M coaster. Now, coming in at number 31, if you know me, you probably know a certain ride's going to rank a lot lower than a lot of people would have it. And now's the time to announce that ride's placement. This is Fury 325. Now, this ride is still good, obviously. It's in my top 50, but it is not even close to one of the greatest coasters of all time. It's not even top 100 of all time, probably. It's got an amazing sense of speed. That's all this ride really has to its name, though. It's got floater, doesn't really have positive G's, has really weak laterals. I mean, if you want an amazing sense of speed and that's all you want, then this could be a top 10 coaster for you, but personally, I want my ride to actually do something with its speed. Coming in at number 30 is Mako. This is what a B&M hyper should be. It feels like Candemonium, but on crack. You get some really good ejector on a couple of these moments, like that speed hill, and I think that 5-second floater hill actually gives some ejector up front. It is definitely one of the best moments on any B&M coaster, and now that I've ridden it, I definitely get the hype for Mako. Coming in at 29 is one of the defunct coasters on this list, and it's Top Thrill Dragster. It had a great launch, it had a phenomenal top hat with some great views, great airtime, and that was it. I mean, it was two amazing elements, but that being said, it was only two amazing elements. The launch is the second best launch I've ever done, though, and it's really sad that we don't have anything like that over here in America anymore. Coming in at 28 is Kumba. This is another ride that's supposedly on the chopping block. I really hope it's not, because it is a powerhouse. Some of the best positives on any coaster. The Hell Roll is just as whippy as advertised, and it's definitely one of the prettier coasters out there. Coming in at number 27 is Superman the Ride. I definitely think this ride could be better. I don't even think it's the restraints. I don't have an issue with the restraints, but I do think some of the airtime moments are a bit weak, especially in the Spaghetti Bowl section. The first half of the ride is great, especially that It Happens hill, but the Spaghetti Bowl is just a bit slow. It definitely feels sluggish at points, and I really wish that it was designed a bit later, where they could design that Spaghetti Bowl to be a bit more action-packed. Coming in at 26 is my second most ridden coaster of the year. It's Predator. This thing has some fantastic airtime if you catch it on the right day. You will get some downright violent airtime and laterals if you ride this on the correct day. Obviously, I've ridden this hundreds of times, so I know this better than most people. But that being said, just go on a rainy day. That track's going to be slick, and you're going to be stunned by the power of Predator. Now, we're into the top 25. I really wish I could put all these coasters higher, but unfortunately, I did have to come up with a list. And coming in at number 25 is Hulk. This is an absolute icon. I think a lot of the GP would recognize this ride, and unlike some other rides that the GP would recognize, this one is actually amazing. It feels like Kumba, but with a launch, basically. And that launch is one of the best launches I've ever done. Top 5 launch for me. The theming around it is incredible, and the power is matched by very few launches. And the rest of the layout is also incredible. You've got some really good onboard audio, and overall, Hulk is definitely a ride not to sleep on. Coming in at number 24 is Pipeline the Surf Coaster. This is the coaster from Florida that impressed me the most. I thought I'd like this ride, but I didn't think I'd like it this much. You get some weird airtime on this thing, ranging from good floater to good ejector in some spots, like that last transition going into the brakes. You get some really good whip and ejector on that, and it's so weird getting ejector in these surf trains because you don't get the airtime. Your seat gets the airtime and you come with it. This is one of the few rides that still gives me butterflies, which I definitely got to give it bonus points for that because not many rides can do that. Overall, if you're going to SeaWorld Orlando, definitely expect this to be an amazing ride because it definitely was for me. Coming in at 23 is the best ride at Carowinds. It's Copperhead Strike. Yes, objectively, this is a better ride than Fury 325. You've got some of the best hang time on any coaster, maybe the best that I've experienced. I don't know, there's one other that definitely could be better just because of one moment. However, all the hang time moments on this ride are incredible, and you've got some really good ejector pops, some great laterals, the best theming of any Cedar Fair coaster, and all of that makes this the best ride at Carowinds and a top 25 coaster for me. Coming in at number 22 is the first of 3 RMCs in a row, and this is Wicked Cyclone. I think this ride's actually a little better paced than most people say. I know a lot of people really don't like that third of the ride, but I actually really like it. I think the best element comes in that third, with that weird trick track towards the start of that third, which absolutely ejects you pretty hard. I think it's pretty consistent in terms of how the elements feel throughout the ride in terms of intensity. You'll definitely get some good ejector, fun hang time, all the good stuff that you're used to on RMCs. Coming in at 21 is Twisted Timbers. I know a lot of people like this more than me. Personally, I think the middle of the ride is incredible, but the first third and the third are kind of eh. I love elements like the trick track double up and the triple camelback. They give phenomenal ejector, but I think the start of the ride's a bit lackluster and the ending definitely could be a bit punchier. But that being said, a mid-tier RMC is still a fantastic coaster. Coming in at number 20 is Twisted Colossus. This is definitely a really fun one because of the dueling aspect. And yes, I did get a duel all 3 of my rides on this. I know I'm really lucky, but I definitely enjoy that dueling aspect. Trying to high-five the other train, and the ejector and laterals on this is still really good. So overall, Twisted Colossus is definitely one of the more underrated RMCs, as I feel like a lot of people nowadays kind of trash on this, maybe just because of Taylor Bybee. Coming in at number 19 is the saddest one on this list, and I've talked about it a lot recently. It's King Ka. Unfortunately, we will never experience this ever again, but it was phenomenal when it was open. I definitely like this launch more than Top Thrill Dragsters. I thought it was more powerful, and you also had the speed hill at the end, which gave some good floater, but what really sold it for me was the rollback I got on this. Yes, I did get a rollback on this ride. I am lucky enough to say that. It was great. You get some good sustained floater all the way down there, and of course, it's backwards floater. Overall, King Ka's a ride I'll miss a ton. Coming in at number 18 is Cyclone. This is another ride that a lot of the GP could recognize that is actually incredible. You get some scary airtime on this ride. I think the flow could be a little better. It's kind of just all over the place, but the airtime moments that are on this ride are very violent, especially with those minimalistic restraints. You also get some extreme laterals on this ride. This is definitely something that you have to go out and experience despite the hefty price tag on your ticket to ride this thing. Coming in at number 17 is Ravine Flyer 2. This is just a perfect wooden coaster layout. I mean, obviously it could be longer, the second half could be more aggressive, whatever. For as small of a park as Waldemere is, this is about as good as a wooden coaster can get. The airtime on this ride is incredible. It's great, sustained ejector, and you feel like you are blazing throughout this entire first half. The sense of speed on this ride is truly incredible, truly one of the best on any wooden coaster ever, and the setting's incredible. Coming in at number 16 is Pantheon. This ride's definitely got some weaker moments like that whole beginning of the ride, but it's also got some of the best moments ever like that backwards ejector hill. That whole backward sequence is just phenomenal. It's got a great stall, a great top hat, great outer bank. It's just a really fun ride overall. It could be a bit stronger, could be a bit longer, but it's still fantastic. Coming in at 15 is Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia, which is my favorite B&M by a long shot. This is still the only coaster to make me black out. I have said this multiple times, but I just gotta keep saying it because that helix is absurdity. You get good ejector going into it, and then you just feel the G's all the way throughout it until your vision's completely gone. You have no clue where you're at, and then you're getting good airtime on the next hill, and the finale on this is a bunch of really strong ejector hills. Coming in at number 14 is X2. I also really need a re-ride on this. I placed it here because I remember it being very intense, but also it definitely had some dead spots. The first drop is insanity. The Raven turns were phenomenal. The half-halves were really good, but there were a couple elements, specifically that turn before the first half-half, that just really didn't do anything. I really need to get on this again, or, I could just go to Japan or China to ride Dino Condor or Egenica. But X2 is definitely a ride that everyone in the States should ride. Now, coming in at number 13 is another one you guys know is going to be lower than a lot of you guys think it should be, and it's Steel Vengeance. It's a great ride, I'm not denying that. It's just not best in the world material. The airtime's too weak to be. It's got an insane amount of airtime. It's got some really good airtime moments like the top hat and the giant outer bank, but it's just not strong enough. A lot of the moments are floater, especially in the second half, particularly on the return run back to the break run. I was definitely let down by that. One of the airtime moments didn't even give airtime, so overall Steel Vengeance is still a top 50 coaster of all time, but it is by no means a top 10 coaster in the world. Coming in at number 12 is Lightning Rod with the lift hill, and number 11, Lightning Rod with the launch. Yes, I count these as 2 credits. I think it's justified given the launch is completely different than the lift hill. It felt completely different, so that's my justification for it being 2 credits. But I will admit, besides the launch, they feel very similar. You still got great ejector airtime in that second half, all the way from the second twist and shout to the final breaks. It is incredible. I admit the first half is a bit weak, but I don't care. The setting and the intensity in that second half definitely makes it one of the best coasters I've done. Now we're into the top 10, and I really wish I could put a lot of these coasters higher, even at number 2 in some cases, but I had to make some tough decisions. So starting off the top 10 at number 10 is Velocicoaster. Yes, I wanted to put this higher mainly because of the Mosasaurus roll, but the rest of the ride is just too weak. I don't think this is a very good ride outside the Mosasaurus roll, honestly. The Mosasaurus roll is one of the best elements ever, but the rest of it does feel a bit lackluster. You've got some good airtime moments, a few of them ejector. You've got some good inversions. You've got amazing theming, some good launches. It's got everything, but I don't think it does anything too well besides that Mosasaurus roll. Coming in at number 9 is Maverick. I do think this is better than Velocicoaster. Obviously, it doesn't have anything that's as good as the Mosasaurus roll, but overall, it's a lot better. You've got some great snappy transitions with some of the best laterals in the world, as well as some fantastic airtime. Number 8 is Phoenix. Now, I know a lot of you guys might think, oh, if you love the most insane airtime ever, like, how is Phoenix up here? It shouldn't even be top 50. Like, no. Listen, Phoenix is okay for the first couple elements, but then after that, it is berserk. you have some amazing ejector airtime, and it is all the more special with those buzz bars. The double down is downright scary, okay? It is not floater. After that first turnaround, there is no hint of floater on this ride. It is raw violence all the way through, and it is downright terrifying. One of the most terrifying rides ever, actually, which is crazy to say about this 1949 wooden coaster that's relocated, but like, it just is. It's one of the most powerful airtime machines ever, and a lot of you need to stop hating on it. Coming in at number 7 is Sky Rush. Now, I will say this, number 6 and number 5 are extremely close, but I did decide on Sky Rush at number 7 mainly because if you don't know how to ride this, it's definitely not this high. But if you know how to get room after the first drop, oh man, those 2 ejector hills after the drop are some of the finest out there. And that first drop is still my favorite of any coaster. It feels like death, basically. That's the best way to describe it there if you haven't done it. It is a bit annoying having these new restraints and having to find techniques to make it as good as it was before, but honestly, it's worth it because Sky Rush is one of the most extreme coasters in the world. Coming in at number 6 is Panthurian. I want to put this higher, trust me, but I do prioritize extreme airtime, and unfortunately, Panthurian doesn't have too much of that. The best airtime moment is the sustained hill, and it is ejector, but it's not too strong of ejector, unfortunately. But I will admit, this is the second best coaster I've done for laterals, and the best I've done for positive Gs and the sense of speed. You feel like a speeding bullet throughout this ride. It is absurd how fast you go, and the intensity on this is unmatched. I know Goliath's Helix is the single most intense element I've done, but it is not intense throughout the whole ride like this thing is. And of course, those laterals are downright vicious. Coming in at number 5 is El Toro. Now, I would have put this at 6 or 7 if I didn't get that full speed over the lift hill ride last year. If it ran full speed over the lift hill all the time, it would be a top 3 coaster for me. That experience was otherworldly. The ejector on that was absurd, especially given how sustained it was on those first 2 camelbacks. But the normal experience is still incredible. You still got 4 of the all-time great ejector moments. You've got that wooden coaster rumble that makes it even more intense. You've got great laterals, and you've got some of the most underrated positive Gs ever. Now, the next 2 coasters on this list were by far the hardest to decide between. I really went back and forth on these next 2 for so long, and I mean, you could kind of call it a tie, because I do change my mind between these 2 a lot, but some recent rides on one of these have sort of made it a bit more clear which one's objectively better, and one of these I'm extremely biased towards. It's a number 0 coaster for me, and the other is one that I only got 2 rides on. I have to make a hard decision, and unfortunately, coming in at number 4 is Wildcat's Revenge. I wanted to put this way higher than it is right now so bad. I wanted to put this literally at number 2, even though I do think number 2 is definitely better than 3 and 4. But I just couldn't. It's my number 0 coaster, but that being said, it does have some flaws. I do think the ejector's slightly stronger on this than number 3, but the pacing's definitely a bit weaker. The sense of speed and positives are a bit weaker, and the flow's about equal. I mean, they're as close as they get, this and number 3. Wildcat's Revenge is just one of the most insane rides ever. It truly shocked me when I first rode it, how powerful it was. The middle of the ride is one of the best thirds of all time, especially with that twisted double down being just pure madness. But coming in at number 3 is Iron Gwazi. I really didn't want to put this over Wildcat's Revenge, but these past few rides on Wildcat's Revenge that I got yesterday really made me see that Iron Gwazi has something that Wildcat's Revenge doesn't, and that's the consistency throughout the layout. I mentioned that Wildcat's Revenge has some advantages over Gwazi. Gwazi has some over Wildcat, but the biggest thing that made me put Gwazi over Wildcat is the fact that this ride is just as good in the first half as in the second half, as on the first drop to the final ejector hill. It is pretty consistent how aggressive this ride is throughout the entire ride. On Wildcat, you can pretty easily tell that the middle's the best part of the ride, but on Gwazi, it's all so close. The death roll is the best part in my opinion, but that sustained wave turn, that outer bank, the first drop, they're all phenomenal elements. The ending's incredible. Iron Gwazi's just such an insane ride, and I really wish I got more rides on this when I was at Busch Gardens Tampa. Coming in at number 2 is Magnum XL200. This is probably the biggest head scratcher for those of you that don't know me, but for those of you who do, you know I like the most insane airtime ever, and it really doesn't get much more extreme than that finale on Magnum. I think those last few airtime hills on it are the scariest elements of all time. There's nothing to describe how strong those moments are until you actually ride it. And they're built different than RMC ejector hills too. They have their own distinct style to them, their own distinct character, and it just doesn't feel right what this ride does to you. Not just on the finale, but throughout the entire ride. You could tell it was built back in 1989, and I love that about it. It is brutal. It will try to kill you mercilessly, but that is exactly why I love it. I know it's too much for some people, both in terms of how strong the airtime is and the roughness, but both those things make it one of the all-time greats. Now, those past 49 spots, and really every spot in my rankings besides number 1, is really tough to decide. Again, especially that battle between Gwazi and Wildcat was tough, but choosing number 1 was extremely easy. You guys all know what it is. It's Air Force 1. This ride absolutely demolishes any other I've done. It's the greatest thing of all time. I mentioned how it doesn't get much more extreme than Magnum's finale. Well, this is the one exception. Air Force 1's finale is somehow even more aggressive than Magnum's. You get about twice the amount of hills as Magnum's, and they come in way more rapid-fire succession. I mean, you barely even have a second to breathe in between these hills. It is just one after the other, and somehow, some way, the airtime feels even stronger. It feels like you're pulling -3 on all of these finale hills. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm sure it's true on some days. It was a really hot day when I was there, so maybe it was true for me. But, oh my god, either way, that finale is just the greatest thing ever built. And the rest of the ride is perfection. It's got the best laterals on any coaster, the best pacing on any coaster, the best airtime on any coaster. It's got the best moment of hang time on any coaster with the stall. I mean, it's just perfect. There is nothing wrong about this ride. If you want to hear me rave about this more, then I mean, there's a separate review. There's like half my videos where I somehow find a way to praise this ride. It's just the greatest of all time. And there's coasters like the Holiday Park 2026 Extreme Spinner, Egenica, T-Express that could do it, but it is extremely unlikely because this ride is truly everything I look for in a coaster, which is exactly why it is easily my number 1 coaster I've been on. This was easily the toughest list to come up with in my history of doing YouTube. I really had to put some time and thought into what I wanted to put on this list and where I wanted to put them. So let me know what you guys thought of this list down in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.